Michael Jordan had faced roaring crowds, championship pressure, and the greatest players in history, but nothing prepared him for this moment. In a crowded airport, he suddenly stopped walking. Across the terminal stood his ex-wife, holding the hands of two children, twins. And as he looked closer, his heart dropped, because they didn't just look familiar. They looked exactly like him. What happened next changed his life forever. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Dive into what really happened. He was halfway through the bustling airport terminal when it happened. The kind of moment that makes time itself seem to pause, that makes your heartbeat falter and your breath catch. Michael Jordan, the basketball legend known around the world, a man who had faced the loudest arenas and the most intense pressure on earth, suddenly froze in his tracks. It wasn't a slow-motion highlight reel. It was real life, raw and impossible to ignore. Crowds of travelers rushed past him. People with rolling suitcases, airport staff calling out announcements, the endless hum of flights arriving and departing. But for Michael, none of it registered. Because across the terminal, standing near a boarding gate, was someone who shouldn't have been there. His ex-wife. And beside her, two children. Twins about 10 years old. The kind of sight that would stop anyone in their tracks. But for Michael, it was something almost surreal. Slowly, he removed his sunglasses. His eyes narrowing, not in anger, not in fear, but in pure, stunned disbelief. His gaze fell on the children, and his chest tightened. They didn't just remind him of someone he knew. They were mirrors of himself. The same piercing eyes. The same confident posture. The same unmistakable presence that had made him a living legend. It hit him like a lightning bolt. For the first time in decades, the man known for his calm, composed exterior, the man who thrived under pressure, felt completely, utterly frozen. The airport, the noise, the chaos, all of it faded into the background. For Michael Jordan, nothing else existed in that moment except the realization that life had just revealed a shocking secret he had never anticipated. Years earlier, Michael and his ex-wife had parted ways quietly. There had been no headlines screaming their separation, no public accusations, no scandal to follow. Just two people who had once loved each other deeply, who had shared dreams, laughter, and life, choosing to walk separate paths when their worlds no longer aligned. At the time, Michael thought that chapter of his life had closed peacefully, that the past was safely tucked away behind him. He buried himself in work, in business deals, in perfecting a legacy that the world would remember forever. The years passed in a blur of flights, championships, and media appearances. Life moved fast, and the past seemed comfortably distant. Another story, another life that no longer demanded attention. But now, standing in the bustling airport, the past was no longer an idea or a memory. It was real. It was tangible. It was walking directly toward him. His ex-wife's eyes met his from across the terminal. Time slowed. For a heartbeat, the noise of rolling luggage, hurried travelers, and overhead announcements faded away. There was no warmth, no playful smile. Only a calm, measured, knowing expression. A look that carried years of untold stories and quiet resilience. The twins stood on either side of her, small hands holding hers as they laughed softly, playing a game only they understood. They had no idea that the man staring at them, frozen in disbelief, was their father, the reason they even existed. Michael's chest tightened as a single, thunderous question erupted in his mind. Are they a mine? Every step he had taken, every choice he had made, every moment of his life came crashing back in that instant. For the first time, he realized that the past he thought he had left behind had been waiting quietly for this exact moment to confront him. Gathering every ounce of courage he could muster, Michael took a tentative step forward. Then another. Each movement felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of a decade of missed moments pressed down on him. The bustling airport around him, the chatter, the rolling luggage, the distant announcements, faded into a blur. His focus was singular, unwavering. When he finally stood in front of her, the years of silence hung thickly between them. Neither spoke. The noise of the world seemed to vanish. Memories of their shared past, long buried under the rush of life, surfaced in vivid detail. The laughter, the arguments, the quiet nights that once felt so ordinary. Finally, Michael's voice broke the tension. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly, almost trembling. She nodded, a soft, silent agreement, and they stepped aside, just enough to shield the children from hearing the conversation that was about to change everything. "They're beautiful," he said, his voice unsteady, filled with awe and disbelief. She held his gaze for a long, silent moment before speaking. "They're yours." The words hit harder than any buzzer beater or championship loss he had ever faced. His mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of what she had just revealed. She told him the story. How she discovered she was pregnant shortly after their separation, how she had tried to reach him but never succeeded, and how, over the years, she chose to raise the children on her own, shielding them from fame, scrutiny, and the pressures of his public life. "They know who you are," she said softly, "but they don't know you're their father." Michael swallowed hard. 10 years, 10 birthdays, 10 first steps, first words, first dreams. All missed. And yet, here he stood, suddenly confronting a life he had never imagined, a truth he could have never prepared for. For the first time, Michael realized that some victories in life were far greater than any championship. They were about love, family, and presence. The twins watched him with wide, curious eyes as Michael stepped closer. There was a mixture of wonder and caution in their expressions, completely unaware of the storm of emotions swirling inside the man before them. The boy tilted his head and asked softly, "Mom, who's that?" She knelt down, resting her hands gently on their shoulders, her voice calm and tender. "This," she said, "is someone very important." Michael crouched down to meet them at eye level, his legendary confidence, the one that had carried him through countless arenas and impossible victories, replaced with something far more human: nervousness, vulnerability, and an overwhelming desire to get it right. "Hi," he said softly, his voice low, almost trembling. "I'm Michael." The girl tilted her head, a small smile forming on her lips. "You look like us," she said matter-of-factly, as if stating something obvious. Michael laughed quietly, a laugh that was both nervous and full of emotion. "Yeah, I guess I do," he whispered, his eyes misting over as he took in the tiny reflections of himself standing before him. They spoke in small bursts, talking about simple things: favorite foods, school routines, hobbies, and basketball. Each word, each laugh, each fleeting glance broke through the walls Michael had built around his heart for years. When the boy mentioned he loved playing basketball, something inside Michael shifted. It was more than a spark of recognition. It was a flood of realization. This moment wasn't about the past, or mistakes, or what had been lost. It was about the future. For the first time in his life, Michael Jordan wasn't thinking about championships, records, or fame. He wasn't thinking about being remembered by the world. He was thinking about being present, being a father, being someone they could recognize, trust, and love. And in that quiet, bright airport terminal, surrounded by the hum of travelers, Michael saw something he had never fully grasped before. The greatest victories in life aren't measured in trophies, they're measured in moments like this. Before they parted ways that day, Michael felt a lump in his throat, a question forming that he never thought he would dare say out loud. His voice was low, almost fragile, yet filled with sincerity. "Can I be part of their lives?" His ex-wife studied him carefully, reading the raw emotion in his eyes, the mix of awe, regret, and hope that no one had ever seen in him before. Then, after a quiet, heart-stopping moment, she nodded. "That's all they ever needed," she said softly, her words carrying more weight than any championship trophy, any award, any accolade Michael had ever earned. As they walked toward the gate, one of the twins glanced back, their small hand waving goodbye. Michael stood frozen for a moment, watching them disappear into the bustling crowd, and for the first time in years, his heart felt full, not from fame, not from victory, but from something far more profound. He didn't know what the future would bring. He didn't know how many birthdays he would get to see, how many games he would watch, or how many small moments he might miss. But one thing he knew with absolute certainty: Some of life's greatest victories don't happen on a court. Some triumphs don't come with applause or flashing cameras. That day, in a crowded airport terminal filled with travelers rushing past, Michael Jordan didn't freeze because he was shocked or caught off guard. He froze because, in that very instant, he was staring at his greatest legacy: the children he had never known, the family he never expected, and the second chance life had handed him. It wasn't a comeback measured in points or records. It was a comeback measured in love, presence, and a future finally worth stepping into. And for Michael, it was the most